Welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Ubani. Here are the stories that we're tracking in the next 20 or so minutes. As initial results set Petro Poroshenko to win Ukraine's election, Russia says it's open to dialogue with the new president of the crisis-torn country. But Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said military action must end against separatists in the east. Mr. Poroshenko said he would meet with Russian leaders very soon, but he vowed to take a tough line on any armed separatists. Unrest, however, continues in the east, with pro-Russian militiamen halting flights at Donetsk airport. Meanwhile, election observers said Sunday's vote was a genuine one that largely met international standards. A mission from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe also said it gave the new president legitimacy to open a dialogue with the separatists in the east.
After declaring victory in round one of Ukraine's presidential elections, confectionery magnate Petro Poroshenko says it's time to draw the balance in the country to an end. The first steps, which all of our team will take from the start of our presidency, will be focused on ending the war, chaos and disorder, and bringing peace to Ukrainian land, to a united and integral Ukraine. But in Donetsk, some residents won't even acknowledge the victory. He's not our president. We didn't vote for him. Those in the West might have voted, but here we didn't. We didn't hold the election here, as far as I know. Exit polls give Poroshenko more than 55% of the vote, well ahead of former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko in second place with just over 12%. Poroshenko faces the challenge of pulling the country of 45 million people back from the brink of bankruptcy following 6 months of political turmoil. Meanwhile, armed pro-Russian separatists forced a shutdown of Donetsk airport in eastern Ukraine on Monday, a day after they prevented a majority of the region's voters from taking part in presidential elections. They are not letting us into the airport. They said it's closed and that we should wait. They didn't give any reason, stranded passenger Mikhail said. Earlier this month, the pro-Moscow rebels declared autonomous people's republics in the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk after holding makeshift referendums. They say the two regions, which include the Donbass coalfield, are no longer part of Ukraine. Only about 20% of the two regions' polling stations functioned in the presidential election on Sunday, and many voters stayed at home, fearful for their safety. No polling stations were open in the city of Donetsk, home to 1 million people.
And let's get a clearer understanding of Ukraine's new lead and where he's coming from. Petro Poroshenko is a confectionery tycoon who backed the pro-European street protests that ousted Moscow's ally, Viktor Yanukovych, from presidency. He was the only Ukrainian strongman to swiftly throw his weight behind the popular uprising that started late last year, devoting his fifth channel TV station to the coverage of the protests. A seasoned politician who served as foreign minister and economy minister in previous administrations, Poroshenko's chain of confectionery shops has put the billionaire on Ukraine's top 10 rich list, earning him the nickname Chocolate King. Poroshenko, whose chocolate manufacturer Roshen is one of the world's top 20 confectionery firms, backs Ukraine's integration with the West, and his firm has been targeted in Russia. We're staying with what's going on in Ukraine. Our colleague at the Voice of America, Al Pessin, is in Kiev, where he monitored the elections. He sent in this report.
Well, Petro Poroshenko has won this election in the first round, avoiding the need for a runoff. This was a bit of a surprise, although he was the front runner and he was expected to eventually win the election. But winning in the first round provides a real mandate, perhaps some modicum of stability for this country that has been through so much. And maybe that's why it was welcomed pretty universally by people we spoke to here on Independence Square today. Poroshenko is an experienced man. He's a billionaire, he's a businessman. He made his fortune in the chocolate and candy business, but he's also been in government. He was foreign minister and he was economics minister, and people who have met with him in recent weeks say he has a plan, and they're quite impressed with the fact that at least he has a plan. But it's a good thing he does because he faces a lot of challenges. The economy needs a lot of help. They need a lot of painful reforms that will cause higher prices and higher unemployment. People will not be happy about that, but they have to do it in order to make their economy more competitive, especially if they're going to move closer to the European Union. And one of the key factors is corruption. He needs to find some way to end the culture of corruption that exists here in Ukraine. Of course, the other major challenge is what's happening in eastern Ukraine, the Russian-backed separatists, the violence, the difficulty that the Ukrainian army is having in dealing with that situation. And for both of these challenges, the economic one and the security one, Ukraine will need a lot of help from outside, from the West, from the United States. And I've spoken to several members of the U.S. Congress who are here observing the election, and they say Ukraine can expect some help, including military aid, but they can't say exactly how much or when it will be delivered because, of course, everything involves a political process in Washington. So, as one person told me today, this election seems like the end of a long process, but really it's the beginning of a longer process. This is Al Pessin, VOA News, reporting from Kyiv for Channels TV.
Al Pessin from Kyiv, thanks a lot. We're being joined now by Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce, who's been analyzing and looking at the elections in Ukraine. Dr. Pierce, thank you so much for joining us on The World today. You're joining us via telephone. What do you make of the elections that held on Sunday in Ukraine?
Yes. Pardon?
What do you make of the elections that held on Sunday in Ukraine?
Well, you know, the circumstances under which the election took place was very unstable, and before the election, many polling booths have been destroyed. Many people, the separatists, have said they were not going to be part of it, and they boycotted it. So it's a very faulty election. It does not reflect really the will of the people or the political situation in the country.
Yeah, but the choice of Poroshenko, from the reports and from Al Pessin's report, you could see that, of course, there are mixed reactions to his winning the elections, but he hasn't been sworn in yet he's reaching out to Russia. What do you make of that? Will this help to I don't know, douse the tensions between both countries?
I really didn't hear what you said properly.
I'm talking about the new president-elect of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, and the fact that he said his will in yesterday, or when the exit polls showed that he won 55% of the votes. He said that he was willing to reach out to Russian leaders to discuss, the standoff between Russia and Ukraine. You think this is one step towards ending the crisis or the standoff or the tension between both countries?
I think that Russia has got what he wants because the separatists have decided to go with Russia. So those who now want to go with Ukraine have voted to go with Ukraine. So in a way, this might have solved the impasse that was in the area for quite a while now, that took place since the referendum which separated the East from the rest of Ukraine.
Professor, thank you so much for your thoughts on the elections in Ukraine. Dr. Adetokunbo Pierce is with the University of Lagos. He joined us via telephone because he is quite indisposed to join us here in the studios. But it's been a sad day in India where at least 20 people are feared dead after a passenger train derailed and hit a stationary goods train in the country's Uttar Pradesh state. Officials said 6 coaches of Gorakhadam Express went off the rails and plowed into the freight train that Chirab railway station at Chirab